journey from feeling powerless to feeling powerful, right? And that power came from, I think, some of these things that I'm talking about now. I think one is expertise. So a lot of times we as psychologists are, what can I say, are accused of ignoring the technical aspects of any leadership. And people often say that, oh, you only talk about attitude and you only talk about the right brain side of it. But the left brain is equally important, and I completely agree that whenever you are supposed to be leading a particular task or task force or a team, unless you are an expert in that subject, your credibility at the first instance itself takes a backseat, and it is slashed if people do not see you as an expert. So I think being technically expert, at least at the level at which we are operating right now, has no other option, right? So be really good in whatever you are doing. So if it is an IT product company, know your product really well and know what your customers want really well. And know also, of course, what are the constraints under which your solution orgs are working. So be really an expert in that field. The second one, now this is something again an oft used phrase, right? Inspire others. And where does this whole thing called inspiration come from? And people would spend evenings and nights over debating as to whether inspiration comes from within, can someone else inspire you, and so on. But the fact is that when we are trying to deal with people, they are having their own individual aspirations. They are having their individual goals, and they have their own vision as to where do they want to go in life. They also have their own methods of going where they want to go in life. And we as individuals also have that, right? So we all have our own vision. We all have our own ways of dealing with things that are thrown at us. And how do these two things come together and somewhere they converge towards that one goal, right? Now, so often people would ask as to, so how do I inspire and so on. So leave aside that very big word called inspiration, which looks very nebulous, which looks of course very attractive, but almost unreachable, right? I mean, you don't know how do you really inspire others. So this is where I thought one tool could be useful, and that's a non-verbal tool which we are going to do here in short. Of course, it's a much deeper tool, but we are going to use only the application that is required for the topic that we are talking about today, right? So this is also about actually talking to people in their own language. This is also about if I am able to somewhere connect to the way this person's mind works, will I be able to inspire him? Otherwise, if we are talking on two different communication foundations, all that alignment of vision, etc., that only remains on paper and nothing will happen. I must know what is the language that I speak and what is the language that he speaks, right? I mean, my mentor always says that, the most beautiful person in the world is the one that I look at in the mirror every morning. But the world doesn't think like that, right? So we always look at, whatever we look at ourselves as, we think that's the best shape and that's the best way to deal with the world. So although it's a very, very simplistic looking model, it actually talks about, and I'm sort of hastening the process, but at the same time it does talk about very deep rooted values or things that we hold very close to our heart. And if we can figure out what is it that we value and what is it that the other person values, then there is a possibility that we come on the same communication platform. Of course, being politically savvy, this itself can become one topic of discussion, but one, I think a lot of technical people and so-called as very Siddha Sada simpleton people would say, oh, if there were no politics in the workplace, how great it would have been, right? It would have been heavenly. But let's face it, it is there. It is there. But there is political savviness is not being Machiavellian or not being manipulative. So we are not talking about pushing your own agenda. We are not talking about telling untruth. And we are not talking about being manipulative, right? But we are talking about knowing what is this whole game about. Who all are the players, right? And if I want to play the game, I can play the game. But I will choose whether I should play the game or not. That is the quadrant in which we need to find ourselves, right? So I must know who are the influencers in that entire scheme of things. I must know what inspires them, what will connect me to them, and I must know how to pull the right strings at the right time so that things happen. So in all this, my friends, purpose is very, very important. What is the purpose? So if the purpose is to get something for myself, then it becomes Machiavellian, then it becomes manipulative. But if the purpose is the larger purpose which is beyond self and towards the organizational benefit, then it becomes politically savvy. So why are we doing what we are doing would largely determine whether we are politically savvy or we are manipulative. Right? So but it's important, and I have learnt it really hard way. This is what our great Einstein said, right? No problem can be solved at the same level at which it originated. Right? So if you see, so this is what I am introducing you to, and this is something that is, if you Google it, you will get some material on this. This is called logical levels. This is called logical levels, or you can call it neurological levels or logical levels in neuro-linguistic programming, in NLP. So this is used a lot when we are coaching or when we are using NLP. So these are typically the 5 levels at which we operate when we are communicating with each other, right? If you ask somebody, why did you not do this? Often the answer will be, system didn't work. I'm going to share, I think I can share this presentation. Yeah. So most often the answer would be, but there was so much traffic, or the system didn't work, or the other people did not provide what I needed to. I have so many interdependencies, unless that other team does what I want them to do, I cannot proceed further. That is environment which is beyond self. Right? So most often conversations might begin, or the blame game might begin in the environment when you are talking to somebody. And this is a great tool when you are either having any conversation or you are especially managing and resolving conflict. Right? Then second, I think the most conflict happens at an action level. How do you keep the bottle? How do you hold the, how do you pin up the mic? Anything, any action can be done in many different ways. Capability sometimes, and I'll come to how do we resolve that, so you'll know how to resolve conflict with your wife. So capability level, right? Sometimes, we often think that I've been telling this person to do this way, and again he's making mistakes, right? So do we sometimes at least take a pause and ask, but is he capable of delivering what I'm asking him to deliver, what I'm expecting him to deliver? So the competence or capability will come into play at the capability level. Then of course beliefs and values. I cannot do it, or come what may, I will certainly deliver it, right? Or I am optimistic, or things will always be like this, things will never improve. These are all beliefs. These are all beliefs, right? And identity, like this is one way in which you define your identity. In general, identity is, what do I want to be known as in the world? What do I want people to talk about me when I go out of the room? That is the identity that we are talking about, right? Most conflicts happen at the behavioral level, and we try to solve them at the action level itself, that is at behavioral level itself. But like Einstein said, if we are able to elevate ourselves a couple of levels above the level of conflict, we are able to resolve it much higher, right? And how? Right? So we call it chunk it up and then chunk it down. So when we elevate ourselves, it is called chunking up, and when we bring it down, it is called chunking it down, right? So typically if a conflict, if the conflict let's say has arisen at an environment level, there's a possibility that you can do less about anything about it, right? If it's a larger organizational problem that we're talking about, if it's a larger economic environment that we're talking about, perhaps we may not be able to do it unless we're really big to influence the environment itself, right? But if something happens in the environment and you elevate it to the behavior level, ask this person, so what can you do in this given environment? What can I do? How can I help so that even within this constrained environment we can deliver something extraordinary, right? So elevating it to the behavior level. Then of course, as I said, to the capabilities level. Then asking, but why are we all here? So have you not been, I think all of you must have been part of such meetings where there is so much conflict that is happening at an action level. Now if you play them back in your mind, I think it's about who will do what and at what time and how will it be done, and that is all that conflict is at the action level. All that conflict is at the action level. If you just, when the environment has just heated up like that, if you just take a moment's pause, step back, think for yourself and ask this question to the audience or to the people who are there in the room, guys, but what are we all here for? What are we all here for? And if we are all here for customer success, then you have already chunked up from the action to the beliefs and values. You've already chunked up. If you chunk it up, the entire conflict dissolves at that higher level. Will anybody in the room be able to say, I am not here for customer success? Nobody in the room will be able to say that, right? And suddenly then, whether you provide those logs or these logs and at what time are those logs updated, which was a conflict at the behavior level, that conflict dissolves at the beliefs and values level. At the beliefs and values level. If you are talking actually to the customer, then identity of your organization in terms of why do you actually exist, because we all exist because there is a customer, right? So if you take it to that level, conflict is dissolved at that level. So chunk it up to dissolve the conflict, but you cannot remain there forever, right? Because okay, we are all here for customer success, but then again, what will you do and what will I do? So we need to chunk it down. So you need to again bring it back from identity or beliefs wherever you have elevated your pitch to behavior, right? So typically you go up and you go down. Typically in any conversation and in any conflict situation, go up, that is chunk up, and then chunk down. But you will find that when you have already chunked up the issue, elevated the conversation to a completely different level, chunking it down and coming to consensus on who will do what and by when is a much easier option. Because then we already have started looking at the other person as an ally, as a partner in whatever we are doing, as a partner in whatever doing. So try this, and try this with your spouse also. So, okay, so if she says the cup has to be kept like this and you say the cup has to be kept like that, chunk it up to the beliefs. What do both of us want? We want that the cup should not be broken. It's an expensive china. Chunk it up to that level and then see how putting it that way or this way, which one helps that particular belief or value or identity or purpose that we are trying to achieve, which one helps it better, chunk it down, and then, as most men would say, you will anyway surrender to what she is saying. But my younger son is 20 years. So one day he was arguing with me, and during that argument yes, and the elder one is 25. At your level of cognitive ability, I don't think there should be an argument between you and I, right? I think it is so simple. And so the argument was happening at this, behavior level as to, what should he do and so on. He suddenly chunked it up, of course, without knowing this, chunked it up to this purpose actually. Why? And he asked me, but why? Tell me what is the purpose of our conversation. If it is a debate, then I have to win it. But if it is just a conversation, I am willing to listen to you. So chunking it up actually, totally dissolve the conflict, and I am saying I am not here to win any debate over you, right? So this is not a debate, this is just a conversation, and we chunked it down, and then resolution at an action level was very, very easy. Right? So it can happen even in family situations, you don't have to have it in an organizational. Then of course this is the last one, Lao Tzu, what is the name of that book? How many of you have at least heard of the Tao of Leadership, spelt as Tao, right? It's a
Art of War.
Art of War. No, Lao Tzu is Art of War, but Tao of Leadership is also a great book. This quotation suddenly reminded me of that. It is tough. It's a tough book in the sense that it doesn't give you very easy answers, but it's a nice book to go back to again and again. But this is of course the art of motorcycle repair, art of war, all those things. So anyway, so the best leaders are those their people hardly know exist. Hardly know exist. The next best is of course a leader who is loved and praised, and we have been, I think, over a period of time we have been really undermining the whole aspect of love and affection in respecting leadership. But more than command and more than respect, I think it is love that finally inspires people to do much more than what is expected of them. So the next best is a leader who is loved and praised. Next comes the one who is feared, of course, so command. So this is where your title will come into play. The worst is the leader that is despised, and believe me, I have really seen these people, and even not exactly in IT product but IT service companies, and being with those leaders even for just their 3-day team workshop was such a torture for me, because you can see how how they are being hated by their people. The best leaders value their words and use them sparingly. When they have accomplished their task, people say, amazing, we did it all by ourselves. Right? So this is, I think this is an amazing thing where people think that, they have done it all by themselves. Leader was just there, anyway, tumne kiya kya? That is what, if people ask you, then you are really the true and the best leader. But I think, and this is something that is my most favorite one. It's not very clear, sorry. Yeah, Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo, you've heard about this, any folklores that you've heard about it? What have you heard?
I've seen it.
You've seen, yeah, seen it, but...
So, Sistine Chapel painting was based on a golden ratio, and Michelangelo actually drew it with that in mind.
True.
And it was not immediately ever, but it was discovered, this golden ratio thing were discovered.
Later, yes, correct. Yeah, that's the art and math, right? Yeah. Why Sistine Chapel is my favorite metaphor is this is just so that you find it inspiring. Is that okay? It is good to have inspirational vision for others, etc. But do I have inspirational vision for myself? Am I inspired by the vision that I have got, right? So like this is the roof, and I think it's looking quite I don't know, distorted, but this is actually the roof. And when Michelangelo painted all that, I mean he did all those frescoes, he had to be lying on the back suspended from the ceiling to do those frescoes, and that was for days on end. And he actually suffered, very, very severe backache after he finished it, and he had to be, lying on the bed after that, after he finished it. So while he was doing it, one of his friends asked, it is so, it's towering, right? Sistine Chapel is so very tall. Why are you taking so much trouble, right? If you make some mistake, who will notice it? And he says, I will. He says, I will, right? So that is something that, every time I look at this and every time I utter these words, I really have shivers my own spine, and I think, okay, can I have an inspiring vision for myself? Then percolating it down to others, etc. would follow. But do I have something like this where I hold myself accountable and responsible for whatever I am committing to myself?